Hello. Welcome to our Yoga for the Creative Soul gathering on this day where we're talking about self-study, svadhyaya. And the intention for these gatherings is to explore mental health through expressive arts and yoga. And we're using Yoga for the Creative Soul currently as our tool. We're in part 2 of the book in chapter 7, and we're really savoring our time moving through part 2 of this book. We're on page 100, and today's entire gathering is inspired by a single sentence near the bottom of page 100, where part 2 is moving through the 5 paths of yoga to reclaim your expressive spirit. And we're looking at the path of Raja Yoga, R-A-J-A, the royal path of yoga that teaches us the system of direct experience, of understanding the nature of reality through practice, through lifestyle. And this is taught to us through the Yoga Sutras. In the slides today, there will be some recommended reading for those who are interested in digging into that a little bit more. Yoga is our 5,000-year-old oral tradition that began in India. It predates, well, the Vedas, certainly, in the Upanishads, predate organized religion. So you can think of yoga more as a grammar for all religions, and the study of yoga can support you in deepening your relationship with your religion as you understand it, or in the absence of a religious faith, can deepen your understanding of reality or relationship with self. And in our classical yoga lineage, we often talk about yoga as the path of self-realization. It's coming from the world's first public yoga center, the Yoga Institute in Mumbai, India. As you watch this video, you're always welcome to join us in real time. The link to the Facebook group where we share ideas, inspiration, creativity with each other, the link to the Facebook group is in the comments below, as is the other link. And carrying forth through the video, you can scrub it a little bit or pause where it serves you. We do a little bit of teaching at the beginning, usually the first 10 minutes or so, and there are cues for expressive arts or practices roughly every 12 minutes through the time together. Also, in the time where we are doing the expressive activities, if you're watching the video, you can pause it and give yourself as much time. You can revisit these videos over time and really give yourself the chance to play, understand, gain inspiration and insight through your expressive activities. I'll often cue you to visual stuff, but if you'd rather play your instrument or dance or write a skit, make a puppet show, whatever your expressive path is, please feel free to engage in that way and enjoy that process and share to the group. We want to know. Remember also to like, share, and subscribe to this video and to this channel. It really helps us with this mission of supporting people on their mental health journey through expressive arts and yoga. As we move through, I wish to acknowledge my privilege as a settler to inhabit on the lands of the neutral people, the Anishnawbe and the Haudenosaunee. I'm directly adjacent to the lands of the Dish with One Spoon wampum agreement that brought peace to these lands, and I'm on the Haldimand Tract that was promised by treaty to this land's original peoples, of which only 5% are they actually in ownership of. So if you want to do a little bit of your own research for your own area and understand more about the objective history of Canada, I do, and the United States and Australia and the UK and everywhere else that I know you're watching from, I do encourage you to learn more objective histories. Today, as we're speaking of self-study, and some of that historical research certainly does fall in that way, as modern conquerors via genocide and via systematic oppression have really created a loss for all of us in destroying traditions, certainly destroying traditions of more peaceful and connected cultures. And the nature of reality and mental health are experienced through connection. So the more we can educate ourselves about other ways of being, other cultural ideologies, the more opportunity there is for our own self-realization. So this is some of that svadhyaya, some of that self-study. This is part of the second limb of the Eightfold Path. The second limb itself are these observances, niyamas. And the first niyama is saucha, health and purity, cultivating, cultivating goodness within the body, the emotions, the mind, the lifestyle, the world at large, saucha, purity and health. Then contentment, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the depths of contentment, abiding contentment. Last week we talked about tapas, discipline, austerity, regularity, moving in the direction of divine truth. And this week, self-study, svadhyaya, can be thought of in part as studying spiritual works, studying divine truths, studying that which is uplifting and connects us to ultimate reality. And in the tradition of yoga, I've made some recommendations here. The Yoga Sutras, the entire chapter 7 is based on part 2 of these sutras, and part 1 as well, which talks about state of mind. And as I keep saying, the nature of reality, that's addressed certainly in chapter 1. The Satchidananda translation gives lots of teaching stories and is highly accessible to anyone. And again, for those who aren't sure how this might fit into their religious practice, you can read this translation of the sutras from the perspective of your current understanding of religion and or spirituality, and it fits. Divine truths are true. Love one another, be kind, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The Bhagavad Gita, now certain translations are highly religious translations of Hinduism. The Ishwaran translation that we recommend here is a more academic translation and can help educate one on yoga and yoga practice. The Upanishads that I mentioned earlier, Ishwaran again is the recommendation, predate religion. These are recorded songs and stories that were taught to groups as the sages moved from town to town, city to city, and the devotees would gather to sing the songs, to hear the stories. This is called satsang, community practice. The study of ancient art and culture, including movement culture, dance culture, sacred objects, and the meaning behind them. Those studies help us understand more about divine truths. That even gazing upon sacred art and sacred objects that we might not fully understand awakens something in our physiology, in the not conscious symbolic realm. And Much is to be learned from the practice, this kind of research and engagement practice, learned in an embodied sense, learned through the layers of the person, which are body and energy, thoughts and feelings, the objective observer, and spirit, whole person. We can also think of self-study as the study of myself, of obtaining self-knowledge, of watching ourselves in the world and making note of what might be important, what works, what doesn't work. How can I continue to move in the direction of my true self? Journaling is a terrific way of processing this, as is mindfulness practice. And even now, you can give yourself a mindfulness moment. Take a deep breath. Notice the sounds that are around you in your whole environment, the feeling of the clothes on your skin, the seat beneath you, the posture of your body. Notice the emotions that are moving through, the thoughts that are passing through awareness objectively, just noticing and not trying to change anything. And this objective witnessing, this noticing what is, when practiced over time, mindfulness, being present in the moment, also sometimes called active meditation, gives us great insight over a period of time. This is a way, same way you might make a friend and then get to know that person over time, likes, dislikes, humor, what we have in common. Svadhyaya gives us the opportunity to do the same with ourselves. And mindfulness is a terrific practice to get to know ourselves more deeply and to learn to be more responsive. Here, relevant to the creative soul gathering, we study ourselves through our creative acts as well. If you're faced with a lump of clay, what does your body want to do with it? What is that interface? Where do you want to go? How do you want this to be? And these tactile activities can really bring us home to the body. What about if you're writing? How do the thoughts come to you? What are your inspirations? If you're blending fragrances, what lights you up? What grounds you? If you're playing with color, what are some of the trends in the palettes that you choose, and why might that be? What colors do you avoid, and why might that be? How does the movement come across the page as you are expressing? These are some of the ways that we can learn about ourselves, our preferences, our hang-ups, so to speak, as we play with self-study, svadhyaya, and creativity. For today, I thought we might take some inspiration from spiritual work and combine that with our expressive activity. But before we get into that, let's play a little bit with movement. So if you're feeling a little more low today, you're welcome to stretch out on your mat or on the floor or even across a piece of furniture. And if you're a little more mobile or looking for a little bit more energy, then come to standing. And as you come to your movement space, just start to make yourself as big as possible, whatever that means. Start to really, really take up space. And you can move around this space while you are taking up space. You can shift, you can play with levels, rising up in some places and touching down in others. Just a real free form of movement. So we're not looking for any specific asana right now. We're just waking up, moving around, claiming our right to take up space. Take up space. Mine. And let some enthusiasm move through. Express that enthusiasm on your face, claiming your right to your body, your right to move however your body wants to move, and your right to exist in the shelter which you are existing right now. There's a window nearby. You might look out there and connect, feeling vitality, permission, possibility flow through as you move. Then from this free movement of taking up space, what happens if you listen in? What happens if you ask your body, what's next? What shape comes next? And give yourself time to move into that shape. So just thinking of shapes before there were prescribed asanas, structured postures. There was simply healthful movements. If we were out in the fields all day, then the body was asking for counter movements to that hunch, to that picking. What movement is your body requesting now? And once you've gone through that movement, notice that there's a counter movement to that. Now, where does your body want to go? So if you'd been rounding, if you'd been contracting, perhaps now the body wants openness, a rounding in the other direction. And from there, what does the body want next? If you've been doing a lot of forward and back, you might become aware of the stagnancy in the lateral places, sidewards. Oh yeah, what happens if I twist around a little bit? What happens if I revolve? Not just through the spine, but also through the large and small joints in the body, hips and shoulders, elbows and knees, wrists and ankles. Moving. And our oft neglected but so important friend, the side bend. If you haven't played laterally yet, if you haven't gone side to side, experiment. And you can make it dynamic. I tend to model dynamic movement in our time together here, but you can hang out. You can hang out for as long as you want, micro adjusting the entire time. So you're finding, where are the tiny stabilizers that are holding me? Where am I overburdening my body in this movement? Where am I hypermobile? Where can I bring in more strength, more flexibility? And if you haven't traded sides yet, make sure you go the other way at some point and continue to notice things like, what's my breath like in one lung compared to the other lung? Is my weight even on both feet? What do my arms want to do? And did they want to do the same thing on each side? So we're playful, we're curious. There's opportunity here. In the beginning, we can feel lost within all these opportunities, uncertain, not familiar with connecting with the body and following its cues. And that's some of why I guide that here, especially on a day where we're playing with self-study. How can we listen to ourselves? How can we be playful, be responsive, lower the stakes a little bit, right? Sometimes there's a part of us, speaking of mindfulness, as we watch ourselves, we see there's a part of us that turns everything into high stakes, and it doesn't need to be that way. We're moving, fantastic. Unless it's time for rest, movement is a much more healthful alternative than stagnancy. They say things like sitting is the new smoking, and chairs are slowly removing life from us. So any movement, when it's healthful, is a wanted movement. From this movement, and I hope that you've continued to play, to take up space, to experiment with posture and counter posture. What's next, body? What do you want and need? And all the while noticing the breath. Let's let the body become still. So I'm going to guide you through a visualization, and then we'll turn to our expressive modality. You can perform this visualization lying down. If you wind up falling asleep, I guess you needed it, and that's okay. Check the video, rewatch. You can do this seated in a meditative posture, in your meditative posture, or you can do this standing up, as long as you're safe and stable, right? We don't want anybody tipping over, do we? So finding that comfortable, safe, stable place to be. Let your eyes fall, gently closed, or cast downward for relaxation, and focus on the breath a little bit more. We'll play with Puraka and Rachaka today. That is the prolonged inhale and the prolonged exhale, but we're going to do them one at a time. Usually we deepen both phases of the breath, but we're not going to do that today. Today we're going to focus on one phase and then the other phase. So you've had the chance just to witness the breath. Now I encourage you to prolong the inhale. So all that means is when you feel like you've breathed in enough, when that habit comes to move through the transition to the exhale, just breathe in a little bit more instead. Those of you who've been practicing for a while, not pregnant, no blood pressure issues or cardiac conditions, or anything else that might impact you neurologically, you can also play with holding the breath in. So extending the inhale and then holding the breath in a little bit before just letting the exhale take care of itself. We're not too focused on the exhale. The body knows how to breathe. It'll handle it. But in a relaxed fashion, when it comes time for the inhale again, be mindful, smooth out the breath as much as possible, relaxed facial expression, not competitive, but breathing in as much as is comfortable. And then if it's safe for you, pausing, kumbhaka, holding the lungs full, breath retention. And you don't have to follow my cues. You're following the cueing of your breath. But when it's time, that exhale comes just slow and smooth exhale. And when it's time for the inhale, there it is. Flowing in, smooth, unhurried, peaceful, uplifting. The face is calm. If appropriate, kumbhaka, retention. Noticing all the while what's happening inside. Exhale comes when it's time and takes care of itself. And just repeat this for a few more breaths. You might be noticing things like a flush coming through the body, heat rising. And those of you who are practiced with energy, the recommendation is to circulate that if you wish, send it to places that feel more stagnant, or just get that in your danchen, that sacral area, the holding place for your chi, for your prana. You might notice increased heart rate, especially on the inhales. If you notice your heart rate increasing with one phase of breath and changing with another phase of breath, that actually shows quite a variable heart rate. And that is a measure, heart rate variability is a measure of stress adaptability. So good on ya. It's okay if the heart rate accelerates during this inhale, that's expected, as long as you are within a healthy heartbeat for your body, within a healthy blood pressure for your body. So you're minding these sensations. You might also notice a lot of fatigue. By the way, if you're done with this prolonged inhale and kumbhaka retention, go back to a normal breath, whatever normal means, and it will be a different pace now because you have given some of that internal yoga. You've anatomically stretched those lungs and asked for a bit from your heart. You might feel a difference in there. So notice what that is. And yes, you might notice fatigue. Now, if you're moving to a more steady breath, just letting the breath do what it wants, you might notice more lightness. You might notice more tingling, energy, a better focus or attention. Your senses might be sharper. These are all things that we see sometimes with the Puraka, prolonged inhale. If it is fatiguing for you, if even once your breath comes regular, you feel very tired, this is an indicator of lifestyle. And it requires more individualized attention to suss that out. Do you need more rest or do you need more activity? So that would be a great indicator to go to your yoga therapist and explore a little bit more the comprehensive nature of what's going on there. But let's play with the other breath phase now, Rachaka, a prolonged exhale. So on your next out breath, as you're continuing to feel your breath smoothing, right? It might be stuttery, trembling, choppy, just intend to smooth it out. And when you feel like you're done exhaling, notice that there's a bit more air still hanging out in the lungs, and let that go as well. The sunyaka, or breath suspension, for those who are practiced. I'm not going to cue that today, but if you know it, go ahead and play. And the inhale comes naturally, the transition between exhale and inhale, as smooth as possible. The inhale just takes care of itself, no kumbhaka, no retention. And then the exhale, we're prolonging. And a technique we will sometimes use to prolong the exhale is the Brahmari hum, the bumblebee breath. So here we are focusing on smooth transitions between inhales and exhales, letting that exhale be as long as possible. Sunyaka, suspension for those who know it. And if we're incorporating the Brahmari breath, exhaling, which gives you a bit more resistance, gives you something to push against so that it is easier to prolong the breath. Having that bit of resistance in the hum actually supports us in extending the exhale. And continue to play with this for as long as you want, just to give a nod to some things you might be noticing with a prolonged exhale. You might be noticing it's easier to relax your face, or indeed anywhere in your body might be easier to relax. You might begin to notice a sense of heaviness. Some people will feel themselves sleepy, and this might be a different kind of sleepy than a prolonged inhale could incite. In theory, the sleepiness with a prolonged exhale would be like that kind of relaxation that you feel near the end of a massage or a hot soak, or just thinking peaceful thought after peaceful thought. The inhale we think of as the engaging, uplifting, inspiring phase of breath. The exhale we think of as the relaxing phase of breath. These aren't rules, these are trends, things we tend to see. And now let's all remove the endeavor from the breath and just notice. Staying inwards and noticing the breath, applying mindfulness, watching these flows of inhale, of exhale, not trying to change them. Feeling the after effects of that Rachaka, prolonged exhale. Noticing any lingering effects from Puraka, the prolonged inhale. And letting the breath take care of itself. And trusting the body to remain relaxed and comfortable as it is. Trusting the breath to continue its smooth flow. Bring your awareness to a relaxation of mind and senses. And as I recite this passage from the Katha Upanishad, allow images, sensations, impulses to arise. Notice the thoughts and feelings that carry along. And when I'm done reciting this brief passage, turn to your expressive implements and let what arose within you be the inspiration, be the thing that is expressed in your activity. In the secret cave of the heart, two are seated by life's fountain. The separate ego drinks of sweet stuff and bitter stuff, liking the sweet, disliking the bitter. The realized self drinks of sweet and bitter stuff, neither liking this nor disliking that. The ego gropes in darkness while the soul lives in light. So say the illuminated sages. And those who practice self-study in the name of divine truth. And allow whatever struck you, whatever lingers, whatever arose from that passage, Ishwaran's Katha Upanishad, to come through in your expressive activity. Notice your breath, your movements, the colors, shapes, or sounds that you are drawn to or repelled by. Staying connected to yourself, to what flows through you. Perceiving this as an opportunity for self-study, not judgment, not even analysis, just watching, flowing, expressing, noticing. Sometimes we enter into an expressive endeavor in one state, and as we carry forth in the expression, our state changes. Insights might arise, or there might be a relief from having taken something that was within us and put it on the outside. This externalization of inner workings, especially in nonverbal places, are one of the reasons that expressive arts are so effective in supporting and maintaining our mental health. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. I knew what we were playing with today, and I did my expression early on. I've been meditating on that passage and the passage that follows. About a page in the Ishwaran book, everybody kind of has the same copy. It's the same page and a half of that. I believe it's part 3 of the Katha Upanishad, and it's as I've been meditating on it for years, it's the same image that comes to mind. So je ne suis pas une visual artiste, so this is the best I get for representing what's going on in there. But the idea is, I see them in a cave and they're sitting near this pool, life's fountain, but I see it as a pool, whatever, it's probably doing this. And the realized self, I drew a Merkaba, there it is, yes, a Merkaba over that one, just giving a nod to the heart that is noted in that passage, in the secret cave of the heart. The yantra for the heart chakra does contain these 2 triangles merged, and you see that in Judaism as well as in other traditions and sacred geometry. So that's just the choice that I made, was to draw one of those. And then the separate ego, well, that's a question mark and an exclamation mark, just kind of like, so even though that is smiling, they're both parts of myself. That's how I was depicting it. So it's sort of my resting face is often, and so even though there's question mark, exclamation mark, I love the sweet, I don't like the bitter. The face is smiling. So, I could almost, like, over time, these aspects of ourselves through this 8-fold path of yoga and the other paths that we discuss, over time, they just become unified, right? Yoga means union. So there I drew a little mergeroonie of the 2 of them. Would anybody else in the group today like to share what expression came through our gathering this afternoon? Well, their expressions are with us all. Check out the Facebook group to see what's going on with your friends. Please post your stuff as well. And again, reach out to me individually if you have any questions or would like to explore any of this further. Dean, I saw you turn your camera on. Was that just to say au revoir, or would you like to share your expressive work?
My expressive work, I didn't really come on to share my expressive work, but I will. Just the movement in my body felt really good. So I just carried that on, and I felt something in my neck. So I did some neck exercises and loosened up a little bit. So it all felt pretty good.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. And I hope for those of you who are here live and also who are watching the video, similarly have an experience of feeling good. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. And I look forward to seeing you next time.